Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. This is JR here with Social Ledger Report, and we have Victor. He's a guest speaker here today. He's going to teach us a little bit more about what he does. He's building a fintech company, and he's gotten a lot of experience before working with something that's not really related with fintech. So, um, Victor, thanks for joining us here. Do you have any? Do you want to introduce yourself and tell
Yeah,
everyone what you do?
yeah, yeah. Hi, this is Viktor Popovic, and um, I I'm in fintech SaaS business today, but I wasn't in the payment world before this. My background is really all e-commerce and merchant side, and but just from my past experience, kind of led me this way. Um, but yeah, thank you for having me today.
Yeah, of course. So normally this podcast, this segment, we talk about crypto. I know crypto is kind of like this new thing for many people. So I know you mentioned you're building fintech SaaS. So but this wasn't the only thing that you've done before. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you've done before, like what led you to where you are today, just to kind of set the tone.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually stumbled into the e-commerce. It wasn't something I planned, but even before that, my life led me from former Yugoslavia, born and raised there, and then when the Civil War broke out in
Wow.
mid '90s or early '90s, I didn't want to take part in the war, so I left to neighboring country Hungary, and ended up staying there initially as a refugee, and then kind of trying to settle in for about 4.5 years. Then I had an opportunity to come and study in the United States in the late '90s, and I chose to come to Florida and ended up graduating from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University with the aviation business degree. And then after 9/11, there was a lot of challenges in the aviation industry, a lot of layoffs, and people very afraid to fly. And so it was I had a tough time finding a job.
Wow.
And a friend of mine happened to ask me if I wanted to start an e-commerce business, and without even thinking or asking any questions, or what are we gonna do, how are we gonna do it, who's gonna do what, I just said yes. Like I was like, yeah, ready. And so
That's very appealing because not a lot of people are willing to do that. So my respects for you jumping.
yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was a desperation move or it just let me try something else, because like I said, I've gone through. We have seven airports in Southeast Florida, and I remember knocking on every door. I would park a car at one part of the airport, and I would just literally office to office. I was knocking on the door, enter my resume. I couldn't get an interview. Anyhow, we started this, came up with the list of about 40 products. One of the products was these hanger cleaning floor machines for cleaning airport hangars. It was a surface cleaner, and then my friend ran a keyword analysis and says, hey, I found out that anything with word pressure has a very high number of searches online, but very few websites offering product. So why don't we
Oh, it's
focus
so
on
interesting.
pressure washers, and if it doesn't work out, we'll go back to the original idea of aviation parts and supplies. Well, it worked out.
I love that. So
But
wait, you
yeah,
mentioned this was like 2000, a little bit after 2001.
this is
Like,
yeah, this is I started the business 2003.
well, my respects. Man, I was a baby back then. You mentioned the search words like on Google were very popular at the moment with power cleaner. Is is that what you pretty much said, right? Like, how were you guys able to trace that back then? Because obviously the internet right now, all that stuff matters more than ever, and it's so much easier to track that today than ever before. I take it.
Yeah, it wasn't easy. As a matter of fact, not many websites. There was no blogs back then. There was no
Okay.
podcast. You couldn't just plug in into a podcast or read a blog to read the information on this. You really had to kind of like dig, and then trial and error. I remember there was an Overture search engine that was powering Yahoo, and there was a keyword tool which I found out from a friend that does this, and it was kind of ratio of however many traffic was feeding, and it was just obviously it's just estimates wasn't exact science, but this ratio was very favorable with the keyword pressure. But it didn't. The rest wasn't smooth sailing. I remember it took me 6 months, and this is something to really share with your audience is it took me 6 months to convince the first vendor, a manufacturer of pressure washers, to believe that we can sell pressure washers online. Because back in the day, the way they used to do it is they would have these machines and they would load them into vans. They had dealers in parts of the country, and they would load pressure washers. They would drive around the city, make stops at certain shops and stores, and then they would pull them out, hook up the gardens, and then they would demo it. Physically would actually demo them, and that's how that was used to sell them. And so we came, and they're like, "What do you mean you're gonna sell it online?" I'm like, "Yeah, people are gonna look at the pictures." It's like it was unheard of, and which reminds me of today, just to kind of make that link and connection with the payment processing industry, which has been kind of entrenched into certain format of how they've been doing the business for decades now, of onboarding merchants, and the concept that we came up with as far as having a real competition, real-time per transaction is what we're about. They don't understand the payment processors. When you talk to them, it's like, well, what do you mean we're not going to get 100% of all the transactions from that merchant if we sign up that merchant? I said, well, no, it depends on what kind of prices you're going to get. So it kind of reminds me of that beginning from 2003, going through those pains most of part of this year, trying to get that mentality sort of getting the switch to click in their minds that this can be done, and why not?
No, so that's fair. I know we mostly talk about crypto here, but I think it's so interesting that you went from selling pressure washers on the internet, in the early internet, to now doing payment rails. Do you think payments and all this financial infrastructure that we take for granted because we don't notice it, do you think we're kind of seeing this need to build new payment infrastructures because for whatever reason what we have isn't enough?
Yes, I would agree with that statement. Again, looking at the infrastructure we have, and a lot has happened over the years, and a lot of new entrants to the market have come in with POS systems and ease of use and ACH payments, and you can do all kinds of stuff. But one thing has not changed, which is really the competition amongst the payment processors real time on per transaction level. In other words, today,
Purchase level.
If you're a merchant, you can do the shopping and choose your processor at the start of your, let's say, business. Is okay. Here I'm going to go with so and so, and once you have that company, you are locked in, and you don't even think about there's other options. We're changing that. So the way that our system works is we give access to merchants to multiple processors. And the way it works is, let's say if it's an online merchant, an online transaction, which is our focus right now as a company, when the consumer starts the transaction, they enter credit card information in their checkout page and click submit. We actually capture that card information with the rest of the order, the ticket size, the address, and all that. And then we disperse that information to multiple payment processors, and then dynamically they return their rates for that particular transaction for that card. And then based on that information that we receive back from them, we make the selection for the best available processor, and then we route that transaction to that one single processor. That way, now we have a true competition where it's like, okay, real time. Here's what everybody can offer, and then we get to choose, and it kind of gives a peace of mind to merchants that there's somebody actually on their side looking for their best.
My respect. So you mentioned what the competitor landscape is, and I was on Grok, kind of trying to learn what does that look like. So there's a few key areas of competition. It's based on pricing and fees, target segments, features and technology, and other factors like onboarding speed, blah blah blah. All that pretty much seems familiar or seems to be aligned to what you were saying. So um, it seems like other major comparisons or player comparisons would be like Stripe, Square, PayPal. Is that kind of like, some of the, when people ask you who are your competitors, is that kind of like what it looks like? And like
Yes,
on different segments?
yes, absolutely. Even though they do not have the routing or orchestration that we have, but yes, these companies you have listed, yes, they would be our basically direct competitors.
I respect. So, here's this might be a dumb question, but I'm just here trying to learn as much as maybe the audience is. Why do we need all these providers, and what need is there to? They're all kind of doing the same thing, but like, like why have all these providers? I guess.
Well, I mean, just like any industry, like I would compare it to my e-commerce business. If I had to, when I was, let's say, I wanted to distribute pressure washer hose on Amazon, I had a choice, right? I could go to this factory, to that factory. I could have multiple factories come and say, okay, I want to order 1,000 hoses, this length, this pressure, and I would have an option to choose the price, right? Because different quotes, different prices, and this besides the quality as well as the shipping costs, I would have that choice. Today, you have the choice. You've shown the list of a few processors at the beginning of the onboarding, right? So you can go to Agent or you can go to WorldPay and Stripe and all these companies, and they'll evaluate your business, and they'll say, okay, how much you do, and per year, and with your location and the risk factors, with the industry you're in. But then they assign the rate, right? And you get that rate, you're locked in. Like with Stripe, they say, okay, for online businesses, because it's considered high risk, card not present, they're typically around 3.2 or 3.3% per transaction. It's a kind of flat rate.
Gotcha.
And a lot of times it's not the case. It exceeds those numbers because the cards that are being used, they're different cards. You can have a debit card versus a credit card. You may have a consumer card versus a business card. So the networks like Visa and Mastercard, they look at these cards differently, and because the awards levels are different. So there's many factors in between how these fees. And I didn't know this. I had to learn once I started this business last year. I thought I knew about payment processing. I knew nothing. I was zero knowledge.
You know what's funny? Not to interrupt you, but I also didn't know much about like finance up until late last year. And if we've talked to some customers who are from JP Morgan, maybe they work at all these elaborate financial firms, they would have not done business with us. But the thing that I want to point out is, I think everyone starts out not being an expert. You become the expert by crafting what your solution is. So, Y Combinator, this famous incubator program in the Bay Area, they've said extensively that you don't have to be an expert to get started. You simply just need to not give up while you're building this. So, my respects.
Yeah, I concur with that. A lot of times us as business owners, we get sort of in this mindset of that we need to have perfect information. And I always say, we don't need perfect information. We need enough information to make the next decision. And so we don't want to be in this paralysis situation of like, well, I can't make the decision. It's still early. We're gonna make mistakes. Business owners, we make mistakes, but how quickly you react, how agile are you and flexible, because we've faced many different scenarios with payment processors when it came to contracts, and well, this has to be treated this way, or we have our obligations towards the acquiring banks or the networks, and so we had to adjust and be flexible still get to our goal, what we wanted, but we had to show flexibility and show that we can work with them in different ways. So yeah, it's just
Awesome.
knowing when you need to be flexible enough and when you just have to say and stand your ground. So it's a fine line sometimes.
No, I love that. Life is many. Life is very complex in many ways, but I think people who survive the longest are the ones who succeed. So, I love all this that you're telling me, but I am curious. So I know we've taken a while to talk about crypto more, but I want to talk a little bit more about it. So, we've discussed like what some of these payment providers are, like why they do business, how do they operate for the most part. But you know, how do you think this is all going to change once crypto continues to become more adopted? Say, you can use a card instead of having US dollars that has some sort of currency like Bitcoin or even stable coins like USDC. So you have all these cryptos and you can use them to make everyday purchases. How do you think this is going to change the way payment providers operate, especially since settlements take like are almost instantaneous compared to the traditional banking system?
You know, every industry will will have the flexibility to adapt where they follow where the money is, right? And when we say that, us as merchants, you always are looking to please and accommodate the merchants. So if the merchants are those that are gonna drive the payments with crypto and demand, and when the merchants start following that trend and say, yes, we want to offer payment solutions to our clients because this is their preferred method of payment, then payment processors will come up with different ways to accept those types of payments. So it's not going to come from just the payment processor just poof and thinking, yeah, this is a great idea. I think the driving force will be the demand for that business and demand for that type of payment. And as that grows, there will be more and more solutions. And I think that's where you're going to have a lot more competition come in.
No, so that makes sense. So I asked because I wanted to kind of understand your perspective. So one thing that I've talked about here in the podcast before is that Stripe and even PayPal have enabled payment. What is it? You've been able to do payments online with stablecoins. So Stripe, it has a partnership with Shopify where if you have a Shopify platform or a store, you can actually connect your wallet that you may have money with and make a purchase with your stablecoins. So why don't we, I asked Grok this, like, hey, who else is accepting, crypto or stablecoins for payments? And right now, we're seeing a few of them. So Coinbase Commerce, their fee is approximately 1%. And this goes across the board for BitPay, CoinGate. Man, there's like quite a few, including PayPal and Stripe that I mentioned. But is this similar to how every payment processor works today? Like they support certain tokens, they have settlement options with US dollars or with crypto. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah, I mean it's very different from your traditional Visa and Mastercard, obviously, and so
right.
I'm myself very curious to see how these networks, Visa, Mastercard, Discover, American Express, how will they handle this? Because
Yep.
in with crypto, it's bypassing them. They're going to lose their fees. So I think it's going to all depend on the demand side and how much of a consumer will want to be in position to have more choices of payment methods, which is going to be a deciding factor how many companies jump on this, and whether it's 10, the ones that you listed, or 100 maybe next year. So I think that supply and demand is going to be the biggest driver of this change that's coming.
I believe it. In many ways, I think right now I think that's just how people operate realistically. Like if there's a lot of money to be made in a certain sector, everyone's going to go there and try to find the opportunity to be the provider. Um, but how do you, and I'm not here trying to ask you difficult questions. I'm just very interested and very curious. But how do you? I've talked to a few vendors, like brick and mortar vendors. They have Stripe, some have Clover, or not. Well, yeah, they might have Stripe, but if they're online. But if they're more person, they'll have Toast, Square. All these different providers that I mentioned. And at the end of the day, what do you think gains the trust of a vendor and of a business, or I guess a vendor would be a business, like to use your payment provider?
Well, there's a lot of distrust, I would say, today amongst the merchants. Again, my experience
Yep.
in 21 years, I've had only two payment processors. First 7 years, I was with Bank of America, and then after that, I switched to Authorize.net because my friend was in payment processing. So I sort of, I trusted that he's going to give me favorable rates. And that says a lot. In 21 years, I only had two payment processors because as business owners, we kind of get entrenched with day-to-day operation. We think about hiring and training. Where's the next sale going to come from? And you receive these complicated. I mean, they're complicated statements from credit card processors, and you look at them. These line items, you don't even know what they mean. The fees that they're applying, and you just give up and you just hand it to your accountant, and they record it in your bookings, and you move on. And so we want to change that. We want to be, obviously we're sitting between the merchants and the payment processors, but we want to be, friendly to both sides. But we want to really accomplish something for merchants that they never had, which is again a competition on per transaction level, so that they feel that they're getting the best rate at any time, not just being told they're getting best rate at the time of underwriting, which is the very first time when you're reviewing their rates. So this kind of changes that mindset of having someone that's kind of having their back and looking at the rates and making sure that they get the best available rate at any time.
Okay. So
And talking about, you mentioned Stripe a few times now. We said, last week I was talking to one of the PR software owners, and he uses Stripe, and I said, do you know what you're paying? And I myself, I never knew what my total fee was if I was to convert, right, all the sales and revenue into the fees that I was paying, and of course he didn't know. But then he pulled out a statement, he's looking, he's calculating, and he says 4.2%. And I said, that's a lot, like a lot. And
yeah,
he wasn't even
normally
aware.
it's in like 3%, give or take.
And that's
Even
the whole
1%.
point. We miss that. We don't know because, again, as owners, we deal with other things, and this is kind of one of those expenses where you take it as a default, and it's there, and you try to build it into your selling price of a product or a service, or maybe you're passing it on to the consumer. You see a lot of that, or if you're a restaurant, you try to get the cash, or a gas station, you're trying to get cash, and that's been the challenge. That's where this idea came from originally for me, seeing that pain myself, and trying to come up with a painkiller.
My respects. No, I think that's a good signal. A lot of people start businesses for the wrong reasons, but from what I've been told, the best are those who started because they've lived the problem, or if it's generally just, it has to be a problem that you care about. There's a bazillion problems out there, and if this is something you intimately care about, then odds of success are higher. So, no, that's amazing. But I don't think I've asked you enough about your business. Like, how's that going? With your payment processing.
So yes, thank you for asking. We actually launched earlier this month, which
Congrats.
is fantastic for us. It took quite a bit of software engineering and developing the algorithm and the engine, and back end and front end with dashboards, because we have both the merchant and credit card processor dashboard, and agreements, and we had to read through the 400-page PCI compliance documents and be all of that. So yeah, so merchants are coming. We've gotten a few referrals already from business consultants. And by the way, this is maybe a good opportunity to share that we are looking for partners in 3 categories: accountants, accounting firms, business consultants, as well as the fractional CFOs, because they understand the numbers, and they directly deal with revenue and net margins. So they understand how even 1%, if we can save to a business, can mean to the bottom line. And so shout out to those that are interested in partnering with us. We're available. So just give us a call or email us.
Yeah, do you have your socials that you can link?
Yeah, absolutely.
They
They can find me. It's very easy on LinkedIn. Viktor Popovic, Victor with a K. So yeah, by all means, reach out to me. I'm an open book, and anything outside of payment, even if it's SEO or if it's e-commerce or anything like that, just by all means, I'm very available that way. I can ask any questions that I have answers to.
Love that. Cool. So okay, side note, we still have quite a bit of time, so we can still keep talking if you're interested. But don't worry, our editor Corey can handle this, so this won't be in the actual show, like our conversation here. Are you still good?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. Okay. So I know we were talking about how difficult credit card statements can be, and I was kind of looking at this on my own. So, there's a lot of jargon, and I think this has probably improved significantly over the last years. For reference, my mom had like a bunch of credit card debt when I was a kid. Like well over 60% what she would make like on a yearly basis. So it was quite a lot, if I remember. And right now I'm in a similar situation. Well, not as bad, but I do have credit card debt. So when you were talking about like the complexity, there's like a lot of jargon. Based on what Grok said, there's like a lot of jargon, multiple balances and dates, hidden or buried details, variable rates and fees. Is this kind of like aligned to what you were saying about how complicated they can be, like credit card statements and
yeah,
how it influences you?
And you see probably the tip of the iceberg with consumers when it comes to the merchant statements. I mean, there's just the terminology of the fees that is being used, and what we're trying to do is really unify and consolidate the statements. So if we, let's say, have 5 payment processors that are processing transactions, and you as a merchant, you get you're not going to get 5 statements from 5 different. We're going to unify that and consolidate into one statement. But when we look at, as a vendor, when we look at these statements, I mean, the formats are different. Some are just written vertically, some horizontally. The terminology is different. So we want to change that. We want to get the payment processors on the same page. As let's use the same terminology so people get used to definitions, they can understand what they're getting. And like I said, we're sort of cutting out some of the referral partners that typically payment processors use, because you'll have a network or your acquiring bank, you'll have payment processors, and then you have ISOs and agents of ISOs and other partners. So we're basically taking out probably 3 of these layers, which automatically will save money, but then also the competition amongst the credit card processors will reduce the fees even further. Where was I going with this? I don't know, but yeah, that's basically the whole idea. Just get more transparency with the statements, so that average person can understand it and can see what they're paying for.
No, so that makes sense, but I guess, one thing I didn't get to ask you, when we were talking about like all these things about payment processing, one thing that got me thinking was, how does AI, if at all, influence this? Have you had any sort of influence using AI aside from your productivity, on the industry?
not in sense where it's making the decisions for us yet. Obviously, our software engineers have used it heavily on building, writing the codes and building the fallback strategies and all that. As us as a company, we're in the process of building several AI agents for our internal tracking and analysis. But I don't think we are there yet where at least us as a vendor, we can trust fully on some of the decision making to directly to AI. I think we still need a little bit of human to look at the things and review things before they go out. So, but the things are going so fast that maybe next week this will be old information. Maybe we'll be all just plugging it in and running with it.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me because Claude, which is a tool that it's very popular, it's been creating like a Claude for X industry. Like recently it came out with, especially in Q1 this year, but like recently they created Claude Tag, where it's kind of like a team member by member productivity tool, which I found it very interesting. Next thing you know, it's going to be like cloud banking, like agentic banking or something like that's going to be so crazy to me. But yeah, processing, I realized talking to you, man, there's a lot that I still don't know, which is very, it concerns me because we're building agentic finance at my company, MintLocke, but, we don't really, we're not too worried about the settlement layer for, I guess, processing payments. We're mostly using crypto, which is faster, and I mean, there's a lot of ways to improve it, but yeah, I mean, I'm just amazed at how complex payment processing is.
Yeah, and probably good episode for you and other guys that are trying to build something inside crypto and that world, just to understand this side of the equation as well. What is the average merchant going through, or what is consumer going through, so that you can kind of tweak and adjust that, whether it's the software solution or app that you're building, or just understanding where they're coming from and what the transition will look like for you. So again, I thought that the idea was good, but then we've seen a lot of resistance from payment processors. I didn't expect that. I thought the hardest part will be getting to decision makers amongst the credit card process, and that's not the case. Like, we get them on a phone like the next day if they're available. So that wasn't the issue. It's the issue is them wrapping their head around, like, you're saying we're competing now? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's fair, but I mean, money is so, Visa, Mastercard, they're so pervasive, they're everywhere, and they have the largest footprint in the industry. So even if you're building a competitor, I don't think they would really care, would they? Like, they wouldn't give you any issues?
Well, no, because we're not bypassing them. They're gonna get their cut anyways, right? Okay. So there's the acquiring bank, the Visa, the networks, they're always gonna get paid because you're using their card, so they have to be involved. Okay. Once you don't use their card, that's when you're bypassing them, like you guys with crypto.
Gotcha. So if we were to, let's say, we were to build some sort of network that is outside of Visa, Mastercard, that's when they wouldn't want to do business with us because we would be taking their money.
Yeah, taking the business away that way. Yeah, exactly. Business,
gotcha.
And therefore money or the fees that they're charging.
Okay. That might be a dumb question, but I was just trying to wrap my head around it. But no, that makes sense. No, because like, I know if you're building sometimes businesses, when you're building one, you can't get away with working around some providers. But if the provider, for whatever reason, sees you as a threat, they're going to not do business with you. So I don't know if you've run into that similar issue, whether you were doing your e-commerce business or now with the payment processing one. But I know a few people who had similar issues, and it was just very difficult to continue moving forward with the business.
It's interesting you asked that question. We were just at the conference or trade show in Miami,
Oh yeah.
SEA, yeah, and you would think that people will not be talking to each other because they're booth after booth after booth of all these credit card processors and ISOs, companies that are selling these services. Everybody's so friendly, shaking hands, going to lunches together. Like, it's like party time. I don't know if it was because of the Miami vibe or this is how it is all the time. This was our first trade show for this industry. But people understand. People understand that you have to excel with your service. People have to understand they have to introduce other products to the services. Like we see a lot of credit card processors getting into building these point of sale systems. They're specialized for hair salons or maybe I don't know, restaurants or so. So they try to lure in businesses either through software or offering cheaper hardware or even free hardware for that matter. So it's that's the beautiful capitalism right there at hand. So the competition will enhance the quality of the service that the consumer or the end user will receive, and so yeah. But that was an interesting question. So how do they behave? No, it's a business as usual.
I mean, I guess that makes sense. Like even on crypto, like recently, I don't know if you know this, but Coinbase came out with a line of products and features for their lines of products, but they're still working with some of the other network providers, even though Coinbase has its own provider, which is very fascinating. I think that goes to show that even if you're building a competing tool, you can still find ways to work with other people, or have your tools work with each other. Because if one person can win, or I'm sorry, if everyone can win, then that makes the world a better place. I think when you're doing business, if everyone who is making the business together comes front and wins, I think that's all that matters at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Second that.
So yeah. So before we wrapped up, Victor, do you have any final thoughts? Maybe a shout out that you want to make about your business? Anything?
Yeah, I mean, if you're a merchant and you like to save some money on credit card processing, and give us an opportunity to do that for you. The process is pretty much the same, like you normally do it today. You fill out the application, and the difference is that you're not locked in with one payment processor. We give you access to multiple processors, and it's really seamless. It's in the back end as an e-commerce website. You just take the code, put it into your checkout page. These transactions happen within seconds or milliseconds. There's no difference to a consumer. They don't see any change to the checkout process. And you can find us on vendo.tech, and yeah, you can reach out to me as well through my LinkedIn account.
Awesome. Great. Well, thanks everyone for watching, and we'll be seeing you in the next episode. Take care.
Thank you for having me.